Want to welcome everyone back on into this thing we call the Just Start the Conversation podcast. It's brought to you by St. Luke's University Health Network. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Crockett, joined by the wonderful Amie Alanson Dundon today. And I have to say, Amie, before we start, got to be really uncomfortable today for you because I know you mentioned last week a bunch of unpaid parking tickets.
We are not in company to discuss that today.
We can save that for after the show. But anyway, a pretty awesome show we've got lined up for today. I want to give a big shout out to the whole Allentown Police Department. Thank you for doing what you do, in particular with us today, Chief Charlie Roca and Sergeant Benjamin Iobst, who wants to go by Sven. Nothing is off limits in this conversation, fellas. You say it on the mic, I'm going to catch it. But thank you both for what you do, and thank you both for being here on behalf of Amie, myself, Jody, and the whole team. Thank you for being here with us today.
Well, thank you for having us. We're very excited to be here.
Excellent. Yes, and the conversation here we're having today is police trauma preparedness, education, community engagement, those sorts of things. Certainly no two better people to talk to in the Allentown and Lehigh Valley area than you two. Chief Roca, I'm going to go ahead and start with you on this one. What types of mental health crisis calls, trauma calls do the police respond to? And do you have a sense of how many mental health crises are handled by your officers every year?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. It's a very good one. I think it's important for our community to know exactly what the Allentown Police Department does in relation to mental health calls. And in this situation, we're over 1,000 incidents per year directly dealing with mental health crises. So that translates to about it's 10 to 30% of our overall calls. And so that kind of says about 10,000 to 30,000 incidents involve some type of mental health crisis call. Our officers are out there. They're coming across different incidents, from people in complete crisis to people that might need a helping hand, to a connection point where we're making contacts with our community partners and collaborating to best serve our residents and citizens in the city of Allentown.
And Sergeant Iobst, what is your role with the APD with regards to mental health and crisis training? And can you give us some information about your crisis intervention team?
Absolutely. So I'm the supervisor of the crisis intervention team's trained officers. What those officers are, they're officers that have received additional training on top of the police academy. And they're tasked with the secondary purpose of responding to mental health calls, responding to calls that may have a tie to mental health, and also distinguishing if an incident that they're on has a tie to mental health. Those officers are specially trained to de-escalate people, so bring them down. They triage the situation, figure out what resources belong there. Then they get those resources involved. And those resources can be county resources for mental health. They can be nonprofit resources, and they can be health network resources.
And so when did this model kind of come along for you guys at the Allentown Police Department? I know 2013 was the start. 2017 was that time frame. So can you just kind of give us an idea of what that time frame was and how that really became implemented with you guys?
So in 2013, Drew Taylor from Lehigh County started implementing this model. It's a model based out of down south, and it came out of a police shooting in the 80s where they wanted to have a better understanding of how to avoid those types of situations. It was implemented by the police to begin researching mental health and making sure we had an appropriate response. 2013, Drew Taylor began implementing this model in Lehigh County. 2014, the first CIT training was held in Lehigh County. And then in 2017, the city of Allentown implemented the CIS program, which is an enhancement to the CIT program, where it employs social workers to follow up on the calls that the CIT officers have identified.
And how many officers are trained in de-escalation? How many have tactical training? Where do calls go currently when they're mental health related?
So at this point, about over 40% of the police department has de-escalation training. If those incidents, like I said, when those incidents come out, our officers are specially trained to actually listen for them. So if the county puts something out over the radio that sounds like it may have a tie to mental health, it's important to note that a lot of these calls don't come out as, hey, this is a person with schizophrenia. Hey, this is a person that has a mental health related issue. They come out as other things. They come out as noise complaints. They come out as a person standing in traffic, a person who's, somewhat disorderly. They may come out as an intoxicated person. So our officers listen for these, then they respond to those calls and de-escalate them. And they're really very volatile calls. One of the things that's really important to note is there's already a place for those nonviolent mental health calls to be called into. Lehigh County Crisis Intervention does have a hotline that people can call in for if they have a family member that has a mental health related issue and they think they're just not doing well. This is for those incidents that could be volatile, that needs that officer who has both the tactical training and the de-escalation training. So you're kind of getting that jack of all trades.
Amie, I couldn't help but notice you agreeing along with Sergeant Iobst as we kind of asked that last question. Can you kind of go into what the tactical training, all the training that Sergeant Iobst is talking about here, kind of just a little bit briefly, just on what that means for somebody who maybe is addressing a call for somebody who is dealing with mental health, to someone who a neighbor might just be calling and saying, I've got loud noises, a noise distraction over here. Can you just kind of go into perhaps what that knowledge for the Allentown Police Department really means on a call when it is something that is, pretty serious going on?
Yeah, we're so fortunate to have the officers in Allentown trained the way that they are, Crockett. I mean, I think what's really important to note is that the Allentown Police Department really has an academy training, 23 weeks, did you say? 23-week academy training, and the police department made a choice. And this is where I think we need to really emphasize that. The police department made a choice to expand curriculum in mental health. They are committed to the community and to making sure that officers are able to handle any type of mental health crisis or need. And I think it's very important to note that we don't know when we're headed out to calls like this, we don't know what we're going to encounter. Listen, I'm a licensed professional counselor. I've been doing the work of social work and counseling and crisis trauma response for 30 years. We don't talk about the age, but like 30-ish years. And I will tell you that I personally, and I've been trained in trauma. I've grown up in kind of the first responder world with family, and I would not want to respond to one of these calls by myself. I would always want somebody tactically trained with me, because you really do you don't know what you're walking into anymore. And sure, the verbal de-escalation, if I'm highly trained in that, I can certainly help with that. And they have social workers on their teams at APD who are trained with that, and they do a great job. Tactically, it's important that we have people that go with them. And every shift has a 40-hour trained officer, so an officer that's been trained for 40 hours in crisis and trauma response. So I think that you guys have built a great model. I think that it works. I also think that if we could dump a little bit more funding into what you already have, right, to get you guys a few more social workers and be able to train more guys quickly, I certainly think that would be a great way to go. One of the things that Ben and I were talking about was average response time for calls. And if you're having a mental health crisis, and I know that people listening may not be in Allentown. You can be anywhere in the country, but wherever you are, if you are having a mental health crisis in your home with yourself or a family member or a neighbor or a child, it's just as upsetting as if someone's having a medical emergency and you want somebody there, right? If what we know that the average call, and you can correct me, I think you had told me the average call for a police response is 3 to 8 minutes.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
So if there is no officer dispatched, if police aren't dispatched to your mental health call, response time is generally 30 to 45 minutes. So I just think that's important to understand.
And that's in an area with a lot of resources. If you're in an area with a lot of resources, you may be able to get a social worker there in 30 to 45 minutes. Maybe.
Wow. Chief Roca, I'm going to come back to you.
Absolutely.
Can we talk about one of the things that I think Amie really appreciates with what you guys do is kind of some of the additional effort, the additional dedication. It takes teamwork. It takes collaboration. It takes a lot of effort. What kind of mental health training does the Allentown police officers, what kind do they receive, and the Allentown Police Academy? If you could just get into those specifics a little bit more, because like Amie said, where she's probably trained to deal with things on the mental health area more, certainly her 30 years, you didn't hear that from me, Amie, 30 years of experience can see a lot. That's probably a lot for an officer to take on and learn and understand and comprehend and apply. Can you just kind of go into some of that mental health training that the Allentown Police Department goes through?
Absolutely. So oftentimes I go to community meetings or groups and I say, what do you think is the most important tool in an officer's repertoire? And many times they mention something on the utility belt or a certain piece of equipment, but the most important tool is your voice, that de-escalation piece. And that's the foundation that establishes the training to have our officers feel comfortable and also our community comfortable. Because when a person calls the police, it's not on the best day just to say, hey, police officer, I want to say, thank you for coming out today and helping this out. It's usually because you're experiencing some sort of issue, but it's tenfold, hundredfold if it's a person dealing with a mental health crisis situation. You heard about individuals just happening to be in traffic or situations where, I'll relate an example. We were in the community on 7th Street, and an individual had a gasoline can with him and lit a lady on fire, and our officers immediately were on scene and apprehended the individual, got him to where he needed to be, and also helped out the lady with very minimal injuries. Thank goodness on that. But part of that is not only being present, but also that foundation of training. In the Allentown Police Department at the Academy, we provide 16 hours of extra instruction on mental health. And of course, we have our CIT Robust program, which consists of 40 hours of training. And I was in one of the very first classes under the tutoring of Drew Taylor from Lehigh County. And I just got to say, it's something that becomes part of you. You learn how to do that active listening. You learn what triggers people. They often say, well, it's a person with a uniform and a gun. That's not a bad thing. Police officers are first responders, and we come out there and we have the ability to de-escalate and then take that person to that higher level of care, that trained mental therapist, that psychiatrist, so that that individual can get the help that they need. But one of these things, some of the broad subjects that we cover during this training includes intellectual disabilities, autism spectrum disorders, severe mental illnesses, dementia, traumatic brain injuries. And this isn't just classroom, but this is also role playing. This is de-escalation exercises. This is something where officers get real hand knowledge of what's happening. And this is included within our field training officer program that our officers go through when they first come on the job. Because if you're just graduated college or served in the military and you come on the Allentown Police Department, it's I don't want to say a different way of thinking, but it equips you with that larger tool belt so that you're able to meet the need of the ever-changing community that's out there. And I want to make it clear, mental health does not equate criminality. Homelessness does not equate criminality. A person that's under the addiction of drugs doesn't necessarily equate criminality. These are things where these people are vulnerable. Our military veterans that are coming back with PTSD and those type of things, this is things where as a community we have to find collaborative strategies. And I think that's the difference here, is that we have to kind of combine it together. So the underlying factor within the Allentown Police Department is how can we collaborate, how can we innovate, and how can we come together to best serve our population?
That's amazing.
That is amazing. And Crockett, just to jump in, I think it's really important to say that one of the great things about Allentown Police Department is that you guys really have partnered with community programs like Pine Brook is your kind of collaborative partner in terms of the social work piece of this. And, St. Luke's, we do a lot of work with you guys throughout the city, but with our substance use disorder programs and certainly in the community and within the county, we have MISA teams. So, we're constantly looking at mental health in ways that we can all partner together. And because we have officers responding to mental health calls, they can hit all of those channels right at the very beginning, and we can kind of partner together collaboratively as a community because everybody's kind of responding together.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. Sergeant Iobst, one of the things that Chief Roca has mentioned a couple of times is the different tools on the tool belt, and not necessarily the actual physical tools, the mental tools, the things of that nature, the training that needs to go into. Can you give us a little insight on what your CIS program is?
All right. So the CIS program is Community Intervention Specialists. Those are social workers that are employed by the city of Allentown, partnered with the city of Allentown from Pine Brook Family Services. What they are is systems navigators and stabilizers. So a CIT officer goes out, identifies that, hey, somebody's out here struggling. They're having some mental health related issues, but they're not in crisis. They may be headed that direction, but they're not there yet. What can be done to help that person get some services? How do we stabilize them? We get the CIS involved at that point. And what the CIS does is they fill that gap. There are a lot of services out there, but they take time to mobilize and get out to the community. So the CIS acts as that in-between person, so they can get them set up with any resources that they need. So say somebody, you have a family member that's having issues with dementia. Referral gets put into the County Department on Aging. That may take some time for the Department of Aging to get back to them. The CIS fills that role in between, acts as a navigator for the families, acts as a navigator for the person, and really closes the gap and creates that warm handoff that we're looking for to help the community be more stable.
Chief Roca, I'm gonna come back to you. Can you speak to the safety perspective of responding to calls without a trained officer, as is being proposed by a group for the city of Allentown?
I think we have to really think on what we want to do. And I'll never look at a program and say, oh, that can't work. But one of the things that I want to say here is my underlining and bolding of collaboration. That part or suggestion is not really within the spirit of collaboration. I'm absolutely for that spirit of collaboration. And one of the things that we take very seriously as police officers is that training. Sergeant Iobst talked a little bit about the CIS program, but I want to add to that. I think something that COVID has done, now that we're navigating outside of that scope, is that when COVID was hot and heavy, the first responders, the police officers, the essential workers were out in the community. And oftentimes it began with trying to coordinate people to go to a Zoom meeting or something like that. But it takes that boots on the ground approach. And with the police officers seeing that from every aspect, you had the natural part where businesses were closing, other things were happening, and so there was a lot more stress on our communities. And I think we could all experience that, especially with the mask mandate and everything else, where people were concerned about getting sick. And we want people to be safe regardless of what the situation is. But for us to introduce somebody that I'm sure the training that a person gets is up to par in dealing with mental health approaches and things of that nature. But again, it should be done in a collaborative method, because I think if it's done separate, you could spin your wheels on certain things. Why not discuss what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, and supplement those? You look at different programs throughout the country, such as San Antonio Police Department. They made a short documentary about crisis cops, was the title of the show, and it's really a great peek into how I can see this and what we're doing evolving, where they have a collaborative approach with their police officers, with the mental health treatment agencies, and anybody that's a partner. And one of the biggest partners that I just want to give credit to here is just our community, those folks who see it every day. It's important that message, that education comes across, so that it's not just done in a vacuum, that we have everything on out in the open. We're transparent, and that's part of this situation. Things done collaboratively, I think, get the most bang for the buck, so to speak. And when we talk about budgets, we talk about what the priorities of a community are. I think that collaboration doesn't just put that emphasis on one agency or one group, because there are many, and I want to say this, there's many dedicated mental health therapists, mental health providers from all levels of training, from our associate's degree to bachelor's to master's to doctorate, so on and so forth. So there are many, good people out there, and it's just a matter of kind of like taking that prism and focusing the efforts so we can get it to the people that need it the most. And that's something that I'm very passionate about. So rather than it being done separately as was being proposed, let's come together, let's collaborate, and let's educate, empower, and make our community the way that we know it can be.
Absolutely.
If your department received $4 million to improve or enhance the amazing program you already have, how many more officers could you train, and how many more trained CIS mental health staff could you hire?
So as you heard Sergeant Iobst say, we have about a 40% mental health or CIT trained officers. We'd work to improve that, and that comes along with not only just providing the training week, because it is a 40-hour curriculum, but also to make sure that our systems are in place and understand exactly what the Allentown Police Department do. And so the messaging would also be education for our community, understanding what a CIT officer is, understanding how they can become involved in this situation, because oftentimes, you'll see a situation situation, or a resident will see some maybe erratic behavior and think, oh, well, what are the police going to do about it, or what's going to happen here? If you educate yourself, this is something that is powerful. The Allentown Police Department, as an aside, runs many citizen police academies. And during those times, the citizens learn exactly what the Allentown Police Department capabilities are. I run a podcast each month, provide an update of what's happening in the city of Allentown. And one of the things that I want to get across is that effort of collaboration, so that together, our community understands that topic. The financial situation there, if there's an additional $4 million to go through, that could add to more training, more education, and more empowerment of our respective community. And not only that, but it also provides that outlet of ongoing discussion. Because as with anything, you always want to look back and say, okay, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? Work on the strengths, improve them, and then also work on weaknesses. We are by no means perfect, but we do the best job that we can given what we have, and then we work forward together. And that's something that I'd like to see. And with that, I think Allentown has spearheaded a unique approach in addressing mental health. Not only are we just improving in the training aspect, but we're also talking to health networks, we're talking to different people, we're talking to the treatment agencies. So it's not just something that we look at, we're going to arrest our way out of. It's something that we're going to look to at times divert, get people the help that they need, but also be cognizant of those who need that assistance more so than anything. And Team MISA was mentioned as well. The county, I know, is in this, and it's something that collaboratively, it's going to get us to where we need to be.
And we know CIT training is currently offered, a 5-day training once per year. Would that additional funding help to maybe get that offered up on a more regular basis?
I would say absolutely. That's without a question, and we can get more. And not just the Allentown Police Department, but all departments in Lehigh County and possibly in Northampton County, it would help out, because it's something that, as a police chief, we want to take a look and see, okay, how can we reduce liability? How can we improve our services to our community? And part of that is allowing our officers to get the best training possible, because we don't want to be stagnant. You look at training, you look at at how police departments operate. Mental health is something that is there, and one thing that if you don't change from a traditional policing mindset where it's like we're just going to arrest the way out of the problem, that's not going to fly. We're not at war with anybody. We're not, declaring an us versus them. This is something about how can we as a community come together. One of the key things that I always talk about is that it's not us policing the community, it's the police policing with the community. And part of that is that collaborative approach. And, for us, we want to be able to have this CIT training maximized, and that funding would definitely improve that. So thank you for the opportunity to answer that question.
Amie, can you kind of speak on the mental health needs in the community, kind of the dangers of responding to a domestic violence call or suicide calls or mental health calls without someone who is tactically trained in these scenarios, and just kind of how far programs like this and things that are implemented by the Allentown Police Department can go?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to answer that, right? I mean, I think in looking at kind of what those of us in the mental health field have been kind of seeing escalate in the past year, and let's just go start a pandemic to current, and how we've seen needs of folks rise in terms of basic depression, anxiety, ability to handle stress, ability to kind of deal with financial burden that has come upon folks in the past couple years, certainly has taken whatever underpinnings or underlayer of maybe mental health issues and multiplied them by 100 or 1,000. And oftentimes, if you think about it, if you think about your worst mental health day that you've ever had in your life, and I'm speaking to everybody that's listening, and if you needed somebody immediately and you weren't sure you could trust yourself, and sometimes who do you call? What do you do? The first call you end up making is a 911 call. So you're going to need people to be able to respond who can help to keep you safe if you're not in a position where you're safe first and foremost, right? We're dealing with folks who are using substances, on a more regular basis, even if be it just medical marijuana, be it alcohol, right? All of that fuels mental health in different ways for different people, right? So I think that stressors that have been bestowed upon our schools, in our school settings and our kiddos, and how we've got teenagers now and folks that are kind of leaving high school and going into college, and we're shut down socially for a year or two and don't have the skills that they maybe used to have. And that all escalates quickly. It can escalate very quickly. So it's very important that we've got folks responding who can keep the community safe and that person safe first and foremost, physically.
Absolutely.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And Sergeant Iobst, how do you work with community specialists to assist when you have folks who may be struggling with mental health issues?
So I keep in close contact with them. When we start seeing someone who's using a lot of police resources, a lot of calls are coming in about them. And again, a lot of these are not, criminal calls. It's, a disturbance here. It's a noise complaint there. So I'll get that information over to the CISs, or the officers will get that over to them. And then I work closely with the CISs in following up and making sure that we provide a stabilizing presence for that individual. And I'll set up a lot of meetings. So we have meetings regularly with our county health partners, so the different health networks out there, the nonprofits, a lot of really close work with the county, and making sure that we take that collaborative and multifaceted approach to get what that person needs out to them. And then sometimes they do need to be hospitalized, and we facilitate that. And then in the rare instance that a criminal act has been done and there is a victim, even when we arrest that person, the CISs are involved, the county's involved, and we get Team MESA involved. And what Team MESA is it's a county partnership with the district attorney's office and several of the human services agencies that comes up with a therapeutic approach, even in the criminal justice system. So it's kind of Lehigh County's version of mental health courts. And what they do is they have court-ordered mental health treatment then that the person would go through to stabilize them. And then they'll be put on like a mental health probation where they have to follow a certain set of rules in order to stay stabilized.
It really is nice because it's really like a whole person, whole treatment, person-centered approach from the very beginning.
So a question that maybe, as we're talking about being collaborators, being all in on this as a community, obviously any knowledge that the, kind of regular everyday citizen can have is an important piece of information. If people are listening to this episode, let's just say a hypothetical situation where they see something going on, and they make that call to 911, can they specifically request to say, hey, we would love a CIT officer to come out to this incident? Obviously, you guys can diagnose the situation based on the description from a call. As the community member, as a person who's maybe making that phone call, does it help you guys at all in your situation? If we say, hey, I'm seeing a mental health incident going on right now, could it be possible that the CIT trained officer comes out to help?
I'll answer this one. So with dispatch, the dispatchers are going, depending upon what the call is that's received, they're either going to dispatch police, fire, EMS, or a combination of all three. And in that route, the officer on the scene that's responding, although he or she may not be CIT trained, can determine what additional needs will be required. So if there is that officer working on the street and they're not initially dispatched, it's within a matter of minutes that they can come in and help that situation. We also have supervisors that do work the road that listen to the calls, see what calls are coming into dispatch, and further assisting, because it should not be, this isn't just a one-time thing, because we want to make sure that experience that person gets, whatever it may be, so that person gets the help that they need, so it's not like a repetitive type call. If it is, we'll work on additional capacities to help that individual and get them the help that they need. But for our officers, when they get that call, they respond and they assess what they need. And that really is kind of, our bread and butter. We're going to go there, we're going to see what's happening, and we're going to make the appropriate decisions based upon what we're facing. Because no situation, no person is the same. It can be consistent in certain ways, but sometimes people have different types of needs, which, we can meet at different times.
Sure. Wow. Excellent information. A credit to both of you and the work that the Allentown Police Department is doing in kind of trying to mesh the idea of mental health issues and the community and trying to kind of bridge a gap where maybe, listen, Amie, you and I have talked about this with Jody in particular, the number of times where it's just, it feels like maybe you're not understanding fully what's going on in the situation. And to know that the people who are the first responders, the people that are going to be the call to action, that are going to come out and respond to that, to know that they're trained in this way. I'm sure for somebody like you, Amie, who is trained for a long time, we don't have to mention how many years, trained for a long time in this situation, it's got to feel good for you to know that the people behind the badge that are out there are ready and prepared to go out and take on any issue that may be out there.
Oh, incredibly reassuring, I will say, to know that these guys are there. If we pick up these guys and men and women, I shouldn't say guys, are there to kind of answer that call. I just want to say on behalf of the people who work and live in Allentown, Pennsylvania, St. Luke's thanks you and your teams for your dedication to serve and protect the city. And we can do our jobs. And as a health network, we can do our jobs to take care of people, knowing that we have people like you to back us up.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate that and just say thank you to the health networks, the community, and everybody involved in this. And also for getting the word out. That's the key piece. I think education is what holds that key that spreads this knowledge. So thank you.
We are lucky to have you guys.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. 100%. Well said, Amie. Thank you. And to Chief Charlie Roca and to Sergeant Benjamin Iobst. Gentlemen, sincerely appreciate. That was an all-fair joke. The people aren't going to get it, but we had fun with it. Absolutely. Thankful for your time today. Thankful for what you do on a regular basis and everyday basis. And please continue to bring this positive message as much as you can, and to keep the training going. And just thank you for doing what you do. We really do appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. It is the Just Start the Conversation podcast, and it is brought to you by St. Luke's University Health Network. Find more information anytime and get this podcast at sluhn.org.